Senator Marco Rubio made a stop in Spring Hill today as he traveled through 5 counties to remind voters that the Senate race is as important to Republicans as the race for the White House.
But the Senate is the one I want to talk to you about today, because that's the one that's not getting enough attention, in my opinion. It's incredibly important, the balance of power in the Senate. Federal government solutions more often than not make the problem worse, not better. In the meantime, we've lost the main purpose of the federal government, which is to keep us safe. That is the #1 obligation of the federal government, to keep us safe. And yet you have people in American politics that refuse to say the words radical Islam or radical jihadist, even though we know it's one of the fastest growing threats that we have in the world. And you know, my opponent is a guy named Patrick Murphy. He's got a lot of problems. First of all, he's lied about his whole background, because the guy's been in Congress for 4 years and never passed a law. But then when he's not lying, this guy's incredibly liberal. I mean, for example, he supports the Iran deal. Then when the news came out that there was ransom payments involved, he still supports the
I had a chance to speak with Senator Rubio, and he says it's looking pretty good for Republicans in Florida, especially with Hispanic voters.
Listen, so how do you feel about the election right now as it goes? There's 4 days away from the election, so are you feeling good about it?
Well, we feel confident about our work, our plan, our campaign, and our message. Obviously, we have to continue to execute, and we know it's Florida, so it's going to be very close. It's not one of those states where you're going to win by 10 points. But I feel confident in our plan and in our campaign, and I have confidence in the voter of Florida.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one thing, too. I mean, obviously, you know, the big voter base here in Florida is going to be the Hispanic vote. And, you know, do you feel like you're really starting to gain on that?
Well, we've always felt good. I mean, no one has worked harder on the issues impacting Americans of Hispanic descent than we have. In the Senate, no one spent more time focused not just on Puerto Rico, but also on the issues that impact the Puerto Rican community in Florida than we have. The issues of Venezuela, Nicaragua, Colombia. But I'm also a product of the community. I mean, my wife's family's from Colombia. My parents are from Cuba. We grew up and live in Miami. So the issues that impact the Hispanic community, whether it's the cost of education, the cost of housing, the small business ownership, or jobs not paying enough. These are issues I've lived. These aren't just political issues for me, they're personal issues. And so I think voters see that, and I'm very confident about what that'll mean.
So one of the things that Democrats will often say is that Republicans in general aren't supportive of women's rights. I noticed that you've done something called the Girls Count Act. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the Girls Count Act is about human trafficking, and one of the problems in the world is that there are many countries and societies where girls are not valued the way boys are. So oftentimes they don't even get a birth certificate when they're born, and the result is they become easy victims of trafficking. They disappear, and there's no official record they even existed. So I wrote and we passed a bipartisan law called the Girls Count Act, and what it does is it requires any nation that gets U.S. foreign aid to prove that they are doing everything they can to make sure that every child, especially little girls, are getting birth certificates. And all the advocates believe that will truly protect many, many girls around the world from being trafficked into slavery.
And was that gained a lot of support when it was passed?
It was. Ultimately, we got everybody to support it, and it was bipartisan. We worked across the aisle, and we're going to continue to. That's an issue that matters a lot to me personally. My wife's a good human trafficking activist, so we're going to continue to focus on that.
So the ballot issue that was done in Broward County, that's gone now. That's squashed, right? That's been resolved. We have a judge, and we have parties, a person from each party that's overseeing now as the...
Yeah, my understanding is that, you'll have to talk to the chairman, my understanding is that there are now lawyers at the precincts where the ballots are being handled, and I just think it's important that voters have full confidence in the system, because otherwise you're going to see people not vote, and that would be tragic.
And one last thing, the issue of Donald Trump. Obviously, I mean, he's not the perfect candidate, but you would urge your colleagues to vote for Donald Trump.
I'm telling people to vote Republican. We can't afford to have someone in the White House who's under FBI investigation. Do I have differences with Donald? Absolutely. They were laid bare for everyone to see during the presidential campaign. I disagree with him on a lot of issues. Him and I are different people, but I disagree with her on every issue. And I ran for president, didn't work out. That wasn't God's plan for us. And so now I'm running for Senate, and that's what I'm focused on. Because no matter who wins, we're going to need to have a senator willing to act as a check and balance on bad ideas, even if they're coming from your own party.
Senator Rubio has at least a 7-point lead against his opponent Patrick Murphy, according to some polls. But with Florida being a virtual toss-up, it's anyone's guess with what may actually happen come election night. Reporting from Spring Hill, I'm Tom Lemons.
Feeling good, like the accident never happened. Okay, hold still.
Evening, Justin. I'm Dr. Wade. So, great news. Things seem superficial, but you came to the right place.
Sir, would you like us to take you to the emergency room?
No, I'm gonna call my wife and have her take me to Turtle Chiropractic.
24/7 ER treatment without the ER wait.